Hey everyone, it's Anthony Ramos. Okay, so Fox's series 911 Lone Star gives us a very interesting look into the professional and personal lives of the fire department, the paramedics, and the police department. Actor Rafael Silva plays police officer Carlos Reyes, and for 2 seasons, we have been loving this storyline that Carlos and TK have. Some people say Tarlos, but anyway, Rafael is joining me today. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much, Anthony.
Good. Okay. Well, first off, big episode that we've just come off of for Carlos. I think it was kind of a breakthrough for Carlos in a lot of ways. With it, obviously, it brought Carlos and TK closer, but I think with specifically around conversations with Carlos and his dad. Tell me a little bit about what it was like for you to do that episode, because I think it is kind of probably one of Carlos's biggest.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It was one of my first times shooting back to back to back to back. So I did a lot of sleeping, a lot of catching up on resting. Whenever I was on set, I made sure to just make sure that I'm taking care of myself and taking everything one day at a time. But the storyline of Carlos, I think it's very similar to a lot of people, not only police officers, LGBTQIA plus members, but all over the world. I mean, what does it mean to be in a position of as a first responder, as a gay first responder, and also someone who risks his life every day to put others in front of his, but knowing the back of his mind that he didn't fully growing up have the support system that he needed, or he didn't feel like he did. So I think, discovering this arc throughout this episode, I think it was imperative to really just show the layers of this guy and how he kind of represents a lot of people. Carlos, he represents a lot of communities, right? Let's say the Latinx community, and then there are the subdivisions of the Latinx community. There is the Latinx community found in Texas, the Mexican American Latinx community, and then there are the Tejanos, and then there's the LGBTQIA plus community, and the police department, and being queer in the police department. So I think when Carlos took center stage, all of those communities also took center stage. And Carlos having, the voice that he had in this episode, I think also allowed all of these communities to also have that moment, that voice. And I think that's a moment of celebration, really.
That's such a nice way of explaining that and looking at it. I love that you're, looking at this moment to kind of shed a light on all of these people that Carlos represents. I think with the conversations around Carlos and his dad, we finally got to see them speak about Carlos's identity and having a boyfriend, with it being TK. I know you can't reveal too much because the Ryan Murphy universe is very secret, but how are we going to see kind of this progression, I guess, with Carlos and, his family, and I guess, just kind of more conversations and furthering acceptance there?
Anthony, it's such a tight universe in the Ryan Murphy universe that I don't know.
Right.
But I think that's the thing, right? And this is a conversation. I mean, you definitely have had during interviews, outside of interviews, but this storyline of, every queer character, or whenever a queer character finds love or finds affection or support, it somehow dies in the end, right? Or it's condemned in the end. And I think the storyline that we chose for 911 Lone Star, of that, the very last moment when the dad, in his own way, in his own Texas Ranger way, saying, you picked a good one. I think that's a lot sweeter, and that's a lot more empowering, right? Because going back to what Carlos represents and who Carlos represents, right? At the end of the episode, you're telling all those communities as well that hey, you're good. We got you, you know, and and going the route of let's build upon this rather than, you know, at the end of the story, the boyfriend dies or the lover dies in order for the gay storyline to be legitimate or to be worthy enough of a storyline in the first place. I mean, for me, choosing the former, the positive side of all of this is a lot more empowering, right? And what we have accomplished so far says a lot of where we want to go as well as you know, as a show, and what really interests us.
Yeah, completely. And speaking of what you just said, what Carlos represents for you as, you know, someone who is Brazilian and of the community, what does it mean to you to get to be a part of telling this storyline on, you know, on network television?
Absolutely. You know, I growing up, so going to school for acting, one of the requirements was to watch television, was to watch film, and I always thought, like, yeah, no, that's a waste of time. I'm not gonna watch anything. I'm just gonna go to the theater or read plays because no, that's a waste of time. It felt so uncomfortable to just sit and watch television. But what I really wasn't dissecting was that the fact that even though there were people that looked like me on television, there's something to be said when you identify with the heart of a character, with how they think, how they see the world. And I didn't really necessarily felt seen, right? And especially when you grow up in America, the Latinx community is immediately assumed to be Hispanic heritage, right? Mexican, Ecuadorian, Bolivian, Peruvian, it doesn't matter, you know, Spanish speaking countries. But it turns out that Brazil is also part of the Latinx community. And so in my point of view, navigating through media in America, for me, there was some process of accepting myself as Latinx as well. You know, even though in South America there's this distinction in languages, so for me it's really, you know, going back to what Carlos and who Carlos represents, it's been a moment to engage on who identifies with Carlos rather than making it about myself, you know, which is so easy to do because it's at the end of the day, you're giving so much of yourself in order to bring this character to life. But really, once he's on TV, he belongs to the world, and as he should, you know.
Absolutely. What do you think it would have meant, you know, thinking about that? What would it have meant to you to see someone like Carlos on TV when you were growing up, to see that character? What impact do you think that would have had on you, you know, if you were able to see a character like that when you were growing up?
So a little thing that I used to do when I first moved to America, right? So I grew up in Brazil. I grew up in an environment where I didn't necessarily watch a lot of television or was connected to the computer much. So when I came to America, the world completely shifted, and I found myself watching a lot of television, a lot of films, primarily also to learn English and to understand my environment and what was happening. And so naturally, I started to discover that I had feelings for men, and that might have not been so common. So I found myself, after everyone went to sleep, maybe on a weekend, I would go to the family computer because we had a communal computer, and I would look up, you know, by myself late at night, look up gay films or LGBT films that portrayed, you know, people that wanted to find the love that I wanted, the perspective that I needed. So if little Rafael back then could have easily just turned on the TV and mind you, it felt so, you know, sitting in the dark and hoping that one would, you know, barge into like my little moment with myself and watching someone like me have a storyline, have a story to begin with. It felt it felt so dangerous, and it felt so wrong, right? So if Blood Rafael could just turn on the TV and watch a Carlos and TK share a moment of growth and growth and communication. How do I phrase that? Of getting to know each other, getting to know how to be themselves with each other, and they just happen to be gay.
Just
And they just,
normalizing it, yeah.
And it's like, and that because then the conversations that are taking place could be between myself and a family member, but all the conversations that need to take place are right here too. It's like, oh, this is okay. Oh, what is this to begin with? Oh, we kind of look alike. Oh, we kind of have the same intonation. Our our hearts beat the same way. And oh, it's okay. It's fun,
I completely understand that. I remember back in the AOL days, logging onto my family's computer to figure out, my feelings as well. Speaking of, I think if fans come up with a term, Tarlos, which a lot of the fans like to call TK and Carlos, I think you've made it in terms of fandom. So what have some of the fans said to you, whether it's Latinx fans, LGBTQ fans? Because I know that this storyline is really resonating with people and sparking a lot of conversation. So what is some of the fan feedback been, whether it's on social media or however?
Yeah. I mean, Anthony, first of all, I need to give a very honest shout out to all of the consistent viewers and all of the dedicated fans on social media. They keep us quite literally going. And I'm extremely grateful for that. The first promo that came out for one of the very first promos that came out season 1 for 911 Lone Star showed a sort of imagery of intimacy between of the then unknown character of Carlos and TK. And that was basically the birth of what fans started calling Tarlos. Mm-hmm. And that took off on its own. There was no advertising on TK and Carlos specifically. So that indicates to me that people were ready to see their relationship. People were craving their relationship, intimacy between two characters that look like, TK and Carlos. And that also lets me know that, perhaps we should legitimize these storylines. Perhaps we should have more. Perhaps we should stop making such a fuss about it. But that also tells me that like I said before, how these different characters speak for different communities. The love that has been shown for Tarlos has been abundant, and I couldn't feel more gratified and flattered. But I think, and every Tuesday fans post on social media with the Tarlos Tuesday hashtag, which has been created over the several episodes. But I think the most important thing that for me as an actor and as just as a person is that showing the relationship between two queer characters in a positive and empowering light is extremely imperative because the conversations that we said before, the tragedy aspect in order to legitimize these storylines is extremely, it can be life-changing. What you are telling these kids or anyone really when they watch a storyline of characters who really fight to be themselves, but in the end, one of them must suffer in order for their storylines to be legitimized. What you're telling these people is that, hey, no matter how hard you try, no matter how smart you are, how competent you are at simply being a good person and simply being good, you won't succeed. I'm sorry. That doesn't work. One of you must go in order for you to stay. In order for you to have a space here, one of you must go. And what you're also telling is that you know, parents that may not be, or simply family members, or want to be allies that are not necessarily exposed to the LGBTQIA plus community, what you're telling them as well is, hey, no matter how hard your kid tries, no matter how hard your friend tries, it's not going to work for them. So don't bother supporting them. Don't bother advocating for them. And right. And that kind of triggers this domino effect and mentality of, well, therefore I'm not going to try to find resources such as, hello, we're here, resources for people to find themselves and feel like they're being heard. So portraying these characters in a storyline where they happen to be gay and they happen to be in a relationship and growing together and finding themselves through that. And they also happen to be in a position where they can save lives. They maintain the safety they maintain public safety. And it's you're also telling the viewers that they can do that too, and they can be that too.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. You know, I was curious, thinking about Carlos, you know, and his family dynamic. Obviously, we've gotten to see a lot of that, especially with his father, you know, being a little bit more traditional, obviously. Did you share or identify with any of Carlos's experience with family, you know, in your own life? You know, basically, did you share kind of any of those similar, I guess, did you identify with any of those kinds of, you know, similar situations that Carlos is going through with his own family?
You know, I think anyone and everyone in the LGBTQIA plus community, in the LGBTQIA plus Latinx community, at a certain point can identify to what we have seen Carlos go through, right? It's you know, as we have seen from episode 4, that Carlos discloses to TK that, you know, I came out to my parents, but then that was never ever talked about again. You know, we love you. You know, it was a cold "I love you," and we love you for who you are, as long as you don't talk about you in front of us, right? So there is that layer. And then there's the layer of, you know, the father not really supporting Carlos being a police officer because he thought he was too soft. Does the soft mean being gay? Does the soft mean being gay not strong enough to be a police officer, because gay man, queer people can't be police officers or first responders? So I think in a way we have all felt some sort of discomfort in our own household with our own family, questioning the legitimacy of our presence, questioning our own paths. Personally, I have been extremely fortunate to have extremely loving parents and supportive parents, which I know is not everyone's storyline, everyone's background. And I have been, like I said, I've been extremely fortunate. So taking my experience, right, taking my experience of love and support and what that feels like and how that really completes my whole being, knowing that at home I feel whole, taking that knowledge and trying to project that onto, in any way possible, via social media or in person with people that may not feel that way, may not encounter themselves in that situation, for me is imperative, because then you're also you're taking your own experiences and just making it about other people, you know, acts of service, right? Especially for those who need it. And I think that's really important anywhere, really, and especially with the LGBTQIA plus community.
Thank you so much for sharing that. You know, thinking about the show, it being on Fox, you know, primetime network television, there's such an opportunity for people to see this and to see Carlos. What do you hope, I guess, specifically within the Latinx community? What conversations, or what do you want people that see this storyline, what do you want them to take away? What do you want them to, you know, what conversations do you want them to have after they see Carlos?
You know, I've received so many messages from so many people throughout the world that for me to think about specifically what conversations in the Latinx community I would like to happen is so hard, because I've had people from Australia, Sweden, Brazil, Argentina, LA, all over the world that gravitate towards this character that also happens to be in the Latinx community, right? So I guess for me is that, you know, Carlos' storyline and Carlos' heart, his heart belongs to whoever identifies with him, belongs to everyone who might aspire to hold that position of power, of command, but also having a heart and also having integrity and kindness. You know, I feel that, you know, there's so many dichotomies, right? It's this image of a Latinx man and what that has been portrayed in the media, right? Strong, maybe a little bit brute, and also somewhat sexualized. And that doesn't really go well with having a soft heart, or just a heart, or just being kind to others, right? And then being gay on top of it, and then being a police officer on top of it, is that Carlos portrays all of these sides with a lot of humanity, which at the end of the day, I think is what we all crave it. It's just some sort of understanding, somewhat of, you know, acceptance. And I think Carlos Reyes delivers that in his own specific way that people can identify with.
Yeah, absolutely. Rafael, thank you so much for sharing, and thank you so much for telling Carlos's story. Everyone, just a reminder out there that 911 Lone Star airs Monday nights at 9 on Fox, and you definitely want to tune in, because I want to see what happens to Carlos. I want to see what happens to Carlos and TK. I have a lot of ideas and theories, but we'll see what happens. But Rafael, it's so good to see you. Hopefully one day we'll get to see each other in person, but
I know, right?
yeah,
Thank you.
Take care of yourself. Yeah, of course.